Presiding Officer, this is what Kenneth Donnelly, Deputy Crown Agent at the Crown Office, told Wyn Williams' inquiry about the appeals raised in Scotland to the Court of Criminal Appeal. Following conclusion of the first tranche of appeals, it is anticipated a streamlined and expedient process of review, appeal and disposal will be available for application to any future cases. It is anticipated the rate of review and appeal will therefore increase exponentially. It is not possible at this stage to provide a timescale for this process to be completed. Delivered last November. What's happened to that? Where is it? And why, in any event, wasn't it brought forward at the very latest in 2015, and perhaps even earlier? Presiding Officer, I've been a solicitor and a member of the Law Society for 43 years. I've got great respect for them, and I agree in principle that we should not transgress the separation of powers. It is for the courts to administer justice. It is for us to pass the laws and steer clear of being involved directly in cases. But in this case, I'm afraid our legal system has just completely let us down. And there's no escaping for that conclusion. So we have to pass this bill, we have to get it right, and there's lots of problems with it, not least of which, and this hasn't been mentioned, is that I noticed just yesterday, reading the financial memorandum, paragraph 35, that up till now I thought there was about 80 or 100 cases. Every time the Lord Advocate has opined about the number of cases, she's mentioned a figure of around 80 or 100. But what does paragraph 35 of the financial memorandum says? It says there's a low estimate of cases to be reviewed of 1,000, or a high estimate of cases to be reviewed of 2,000. Cabinet Secretary, I think we've got some work to do here to find out what exactly is the explanation for that enormous discrepancy. Maybe a simple answer, but here we are at stage one and we've got no inkling, Presiding Officer, of the answer. I'll give way to the Cabinet Secretary.
Cabinet Secretary. I'm grateful to Mr Ewing, Presiding Officer. Can I just clarify that the explanatory notes and the financial memorandum says that the best estimate of cases to be quashed is 200. It could be lower, it could be higher. But to ensure that we capture everyone who's suffered a miscarriage of justice, we will indeed need to look at between 1,000 and 2,000 cases if we are going to be satisfied that justice is going to be served. Fergus Ewing.
Well, I absolutely agree with that, but the question I ask is, why are we only finding out about this much higher possible figure now? We didn't hear about it in January, and we didn't hear about it last week from the Lord Advocate. Well, also, the victims have been betrayed not just once, not just twice, but at least thrice. Firstly, by being wrongly convicted. Secondly, by the cover-up, the venal, the deceitful, the illegal, the bullying, the Stasi-like behaviour of those acting on behalf of the Post Office. But thirdly, by the failure of the Scottish system, of which I and other solicitors here are proud to have been part of for all my adult life, to be a truly effective, independent prosecutorial system. The Crown were, as they admit, and they were forced to admit it, incidentally, they didn't come clean. They were forced to admit it by an FOI from the BBC and by having to give evidence to the Wyn Williams inquiry. If it hadn't been for those things, we may be none the wiser. This may have been completely covered up. But they were told in 2013 at 2 meetings that the Horizon system was apparently flawed, and their first reaction was to say, let's terminate the policy. That, I think, must have been the right one. But they were persuaded, we don't quite know why, to do otherwise. But at the end of the second meeting in September, they were promised that Carter Knight, the solicitors for the Post Office, would carry out, quotes, a full examination of all Horizon cases. Now, if that was said at September, wasn't there somebody in the Crown Office shrewd enough to say, well, hang on, if everything is fine with Horizon, why is it we need a full examination? Surely that's inconsistent with a bland assurance that all is well and that there are no dodgy cases. And moreover, as Pauline McNeill was asked, why didn't they pick up the phone to Second Sight or Helen Rose? Did they? We don't really know. Did they make any inquiries whatsoever as our independent investigators of a system of which I up till now, I was fairly proud? And thirdly, I mean, you know, it's not exactly a huge shock to many of us that computers don't always work very well. I mean, my goodness me, I was Cabinet Secretary for Rural. I spent 2 years of my life involved in minutiae of trying to fix a dud computer system. And in any event, which computer system is so intelligent that it can detect when it is being operated north of Hadrian's Wall? That's a thing, isn't it? Did any of the people in the Crown Office ask any questions about that? And moreover, since there were so many sub-postmasters and mistresses that were being charged, didn't somebody in the Crown Office say, hang on, these must be amongst the most law-abiding people in the country? How come there's this sudden flood of crooks that are running sub-post offices? I mean, the whole thing just looks to me utterly, utterly incredible. And the first duty we have is to the victims and get compensation. I support the Cabinet Secretary about that. But in conclusion, Presiding Officer, we must know what happened. The Crown Office must come clean. They have to voluntarily give us a full, thorough and credible account of what happened. And until they do, this won't go away. And I think that would do the reputation of the Crown Office no good whatsoever.